George R.R. Martin has more or less lost the goodwill of most of his fan base by this point. He's been holding out on his readers for almost 15 years for the long-awaited 6th entry of his beloved A Song of Ice and Fire series. He seems to find any excuse to do anything else but work on The Winds of Winter. Then when fans express their reasonable disappointment that the series that they fell in love with and invested themselves in for decades might never be finished, he seems to treat them with disdain, like they're just being rude and ungrateful. You know, as if though their commitment to reading and talking about this series over the years isn't what made George R.R. Martin so rich and successful, and not finishing it isn't sort of a punch in their guts. Personally, I still love George R.R. Martin. I think he's a very wise man and a great writer, but suffice it to say that I've sort of come to expect myself not to agree with the stuff he says in his blog or in interviews these days. Whenever he's talking about The Winds of Winter or Game of Thrones or any of these TV projects or spin-offs he's working on, like his cookbook or the bar he wants to open, at this point I'm just like, yeah, whatever, man, are you gonna finish the book or not? Come on! Just give us an answer, for heaven's sake. Recently, though, he actually said something in an interview with Collider that angered a lot of Game of Thrones fans, but I gotta say, I totally agree with him on this one. He was asked about other projects he would like to adapt, or which scene or part of his work he'd be most excited to see adapted, and he had this to say.
But I have a significant backlist. Some of these I would like to see made, but I think maybe my favorite child is my vampire book, Fevre Dream. I like it a lot, and I think it would be a great movie. I wrote the screenplay myself for Fevre Dream, and it turned out pretty well.
Now, of course fans were upset. If you look at the comments, they say things like, The Song of Ice and Fire is never going to be finished, or personally, I dream of spring, or, okay, this was the interview I needed to finally let go of A Song of Ice and Fire, he's never gonna finish. It's like once again he's whining about how he's not getting the project he wants off the ground, while once again neglecting The Winds of Winter and thinking about other stuff. But here's the thing. He's right about this. I actually have to agree with Mr. G.R.R. Martino on this take, and there are two main reasons for this. The first is related to how good Fevre Dream is as a book, and how much potential it would have as a fresh new project, and the second has to do with the declining quality of the Game of Thrones brand. Let's quickly cover them both. First, let's talk about Fevre Dream and give credit to his idea, because I feel like a lot of people who got upset about this never even gave it a chance. I recently read this book, and holy shit, it is good, man. Outside of A Song of Ice and Fire, it's often argued that Fevre Dream might be George R.R. Martin's finest work. For those who haven't read it, without spoiling anything, let me give you a basic rundown of what this book is about. It takes place on the Mississippi River in the 1860s. At that time, they used to transport passengers and cargo up and down the river on these big steamboats, these huge steam-powered ships. The story is about an old, grizzled steamboat captain and investor named Abner Marsh, who loses his entire fortune in an accident. He basically gets run into the mud when all these ships that he invested in sink. But then a mysterious man named Joshua York introduces himself with a proposition. York has a treasure chest full of gold and jewels from around the world, and he offers to buy Marsh a new steamship with whatever specifications he wants. He'll basically have a ship commissioned for him that would be the best ship on the water, but only on one condition. In return for the ship, Marsh has to let York and his strange companions come aboard as passengers in blacked out rooms. He's not allowed to enter their rooms, and he has to follow York's orders without ever questioning them. And so slowly as the book goes on, Abner Marsh starts to find out that there's something weird about York, and that perhaps York has enemies that he needs to deal with. It's a really cool book, and it has so many cool scenes and twists and tension and build-up that would lend itself beautifully as like a TV miniseries or even as a movie. The characters are also so cool. The way George R.R. Martin depicts the vampires as these sort of classy and elegant people with these very strange ways of being, all the subtexts and clues as to their true nature, it really is that classic George R.R. Martin style, but in the very underappreciated setting of 19th century Louisiana. It's believed that this book at least partially inspired Hidetaka Miyazaki when he was making Bloodborne, and it certainly has a bit of a cult following among readers. And honestly, it's just sick. It would make such an interesting project, and it would be such a cool revival of the vampire genre. You know, the vampire genre kind of comes and goes. Obviously, you had Dracula, then you had Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s. That was like the king of vampire shows. Then it fizzled out again until you had Twilight, which was sort of more of like a girls' romance version of the vampire genre, but now it's been a while since we've had a good vampire story, and what a way to bring it back this would be. More of a mysterious and gritty take. And they could do a great job hyping it up too. They could make mad money off of this. Like, imagine they put out a really tight trailer with really good actors portraying these interesting characters. A new feature film adapted from George R.R. Martin's landmark vampire novel. And it's like, you see all these bats flying around and shit. It would be amazing. I would personally be so much more excited to see that they were making Fevre Dream as a miniseries or something than yet another season of Hot D or Dunk and Egg or the Jon Snow sequel show or The Long Night. And this kind of brings me neatly along to my second reason why I agree with George R.R. Martin. And this might be a bit more controversial, you might disagree, but honestly, fuck these spin-off shows, dude. Fuck them. Screw them. They suck. Okay, they don't totally suck, but they are deeply flawed and they're simply never going to hit nearly as hard as peak Game of Thrones. House of the Dragon Season 1 and the first half of Season 2 were pretty good. Then it started to kind of fall apart. I'm sure Dunk and Egg will be good, it'll be nice. But at the end of the day, none of these projects are really going to bring back what made Game of Thrones so special, because their only appeal is that they call back to Game of Thrones when it was still good. And it doesn't help that the creators of these shows keep making these questionable writing decisions, where they deviate from the source material in the stupidest ways, with results that are always inferior to what George actually wrote. I'll talk about this more in other videos, but I'm also not a huge fan of this franchise turning into one of those things where every little mystery from the books, like the truth about the Targaryens, or what really happened during the Long Night, or what the Valyrian Freehold looked like in its prime, is thoroughly explained to us through an endless series of spin-offs and side projects. I find that this kind of stuff sort of spoils a lot of the core mysteries of the books that readers have been theorizing about for so many years, and if anything, all they're gonna do is oversaturate the brand to the point where it becomes unrecognizable. Like, at the rate they're going, it's just gonna end up like Star Wars, where you just have a project after project after project pumped out onto all these different streaming services and platforms, constantly trying to make more money with endless callbacks and references to the Game of Thrones show and the books, and we're seeing it happen with The Lord of the Rings too. Like, the movies were a great adaptation of the books, but now you can see the first signs that they're gonna start shoveling more and more projects out until Lord of the Rings becomes a mess. Tolkien would be rolling in his grave if he saw this, man. I know a lot of people love to see their favorite franchises get more content, but in my opinion, there comes a point of diminishing returns where it's best to just leave a franchise alone for a while. Recognize that it's had a good run, but it might be time for the popular zeitgeist to move on to something new. That's exactly what Game of Thrones did in the first place. We were all just rewatching Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Star Wars over and over again. We were like, well, I guess this is it. And then a Game of Thrones just dropped onto the pop culture scene and changed fantasy for a whole new generation. But now it's not fresh anymore. All these projects are basically just clones of its original run, trying to squeeze a bit of nostalgia from that early season magic into yet another cast of characters. And in my opinion, I think it's past time for that next new thing, a new project that blows our minds. Which I guess was Dune, to be honest, but let's stay on topic here. Look, as incredible as House of the Dragon was at times, I personally just think that the Game of Thrones spin-off projects are already getting a bit stale, and they leave me with this hollow feeling when I watch them, like I just wish I could go back and re-experience a Game of Thrones. And it got me thinking, many fans are saying they want more and more spin-offs just to be back in Westeros, because it just feels so good to be back in Westeros. It's like getting the old band back together. But perhaps they don't know what they truly desire, in that they think they want a show where they're back in Westeros, but what they really want is a show that gives them that same feeling they had when they first got drawn into the world of a Game of Thrones all those years ago. That feeling of mystery and excitement, of a new story with new characters in a threatening and dangerous world of betrayal and tension, where anything could happen. And I'm sorry, but no amount of Hot D or Dunk and Egg or backstories of Robert's Rebellion or The Long Night is really gonna do that for most of us. But you know what might? Fevre Dream. If they put out a proper adaptation of Fevre Dream, I think that more than anything else would have the best chance of bringing us all back that feeling of a cool new movie written by George R.R. Martin that takes our breath away and has us all shivering once again. So yeah, if you made it this far, thanks for watching. Let me know if you agree with this take or not. This is a new channel. It's kind of a spin-off of my main gaming channel, Snulch, because I want to talk about this shit. And yeah, let me know. Personally, I'd rather see Fevre Dream than like 5 more seasons of Targaryen backstory and fucking random bullshit. But hey, that's just me. You let me know if you agree, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.